All right, guys, I need to come clean. I want to be completely forthright and honest about this. I have actually hired dozens of paid actors to play poker against me. I wanted to look good on YouTube, making $100 an hour, and I thought that was the only way it was possible. Unfortunately, after 100 or so hours, I ran out of money and was no longer able to pay them, so that's why I've been losing these last few sessions.
Let's rewind a second. That's me, Marc Goone.
Wow.
And no, I didn't hire paid actors to play with me, but the last couple months, it feels like the poker gods have had one mission: to attempt to humble Marc Goone. It's been a stark reminder that variance can send you for a wild ride, even if you do think you have a pretty substantial edge. We're getting close to that finish line of 300 hours, and I am quite a distance away from the goal. However, we're not done yet. There's still a chance. Can I flip a middle finger to the gods of variance and pull off the impossible? Let's find out.
Down bad, bounce back, boy, I'm different. Watch how I handle my business. Watch with the hands not ticking. Listen, that's that drum kick, boom, coming out of my system.
All right, jumping into our first session of the week here at Hustler. Could be rough this week without having the paid actors, but we'll do our best. This hand, it limps around to us in the small blind EP and button limp. We've got 8-4 of diamonds. We just check our option. Big blind checks. Flop pretty good. King 8-4. And with multiple players, 3 players in position to us, I'm just going to be checking range here. I check. Big blind goes $20. Now the EP player jams all in for $65. Folds around to us. We are just going to cold call here. Try to keep the big blind in, who actually has a reasonable stack if possible. So we call. Unfortunately, the big blind folds and we are heads up all in. Turn is a deuce of clubs. River is a 5 of hearts.
No, I rivered it.
We show and win. All right, so this was pretty fun. 2 of the players at the table have this ongoing bet. One of the players says if an older player at the table guesses the current song on at Hustler, he will give him his car. So he asks the guy at the table, some pop song is on, and he asks him to name the singer to win his car, and this goes on every week. So here's a little snippet.
This is going to be a win when I get a new car. There's this ongoing where he gives us the song, title, and artist. He gets his card. I'll go with Flash Cadillac.
Take your keys back, please.
He said Flash Cadillac?
Yeah.
All right, next hand here. Button opens to 25. We're going to 3-bet in the small blind with ace-jack. I think the button is probably opening relatively wide here. And now the button's going to call. We're heads up to a flop, which comes deuce, ace, jack. And I instinctively check here. This is the one board, these static dry boards, they will check back. Top pair. Probably should just be deviating here, but he checks it back. Turn is now an 8 of hearts. And at this point, like I said, I do think he can still have some ace-x to check back the flop. He can also now have some flush draws. He can have some straight draws, 10-9 suited. So I think if he's got any piece of this, he's probably not folding. So I'm just gonna go big here on the turn. I go 200, and now surprisingly, the button clicks it to 400. I'm a little bit concerned. I'm seeing monsters under the bed a little bit with the way things have been going the last few sessions. A little bit concerned. We've just run into pocket 8s here, but also, you know, there's just more combos of ace 8 suited, jack 8 suited, jack X of hearts that could be doing this. I think there's more hands we're beating than hands we're losing. Don't think he's ever folding. We jam for 930 effective. He doesn't snap call, which is great, and he puts the money in. River is the innocuous 10 of clubs. We table, and we are good against jack 8 suited. So he turned to pair here, and we win a nice little pot, doubling up with ace-jack. All right, next hand here, double board PLO bum pot. We've got queen jack 4 deuce, and we're 8 ways. Board 1 comes jack 7 deuce, so we've got 2 pair, but there's 3 clubs, so there's already a flush out there. And board 2 comes 9 7 3 with a couple of hearts. Action checks around. Now there's an ace of clubs up top and a deuce of hearts down below, so still not really much going on for us here. We've got 2 pair on a board with a flush, and we've got bottom pair on the other board, so we're gonna check again, action checks through again. Now on the river, jack of hearts up top. So we do make a full house, jacks full of deuces, and the bottom board is a 6 of diamonds. Now under the gun comes out and bets 100 and EP calls. And at this point, I do think we've got a little bit of fold equity, because I do think if under the gun or EP had the nuts, like an ace high flush on the second board, one of those players would have either A, come out and just potted or bet big on the turn, or B, chosen a larger size here on the river. So I do think if they're playing that other board, we've got a bit of fold equity here. Feels like one of these guys maybe has a smaller flush on the other board. One of these guys has a straight on the other board. Either way, we've got really nothing going on the second board, so we can apply a little bit of pressure here and get both of these players to fold. That would be great if we could just take down this whole pot. So we are going to pot it. We put in a raise to 700. Both players fold here, and we take down the double board PLO bomb pot. All right, next hand, hijack goes 25. We 3-bet to 75 in the cutoff with ace queen offsuit. He is going to call. We are heads up to a flop, 8-6 deuce, and when he checks, I'm just c-betting my entire range small, so that is the plan here. I go 60 and he calls. Turn is now a 7 of clubs. At this point, even in a 3-bet pot, I think I've got a smidge of showdown value. We are just going to check this back with ace queen high. River is a deuce pairing the board, and when he checks, once again, no reason to deviate off the plan here. Still think we've got showdown value with ace queen high, so we are going to check it back. Hijack says he's got king high, so we just show our hand and we win a nice little pot with ace high. Next hand, low jack makes it 15, and we 3-bet in the hijack with pocket kigglies to $60. Low jack is going to call. We are heads up to a flop, which comes 5-4 deuce, and now he donks for $60. And normally when players donk heads up in a single raise pot, it's going to be full of shit. Now, when they donk in a 3-bet pot, going to be a little bit different, going to be stronger hands in general, just a little bit of a stronger range. Now, this doesn't mean it's a nutted range, but it does mean it's stronger than when they donk in a single raise pot heads up. So when he donks here for 60, he's got about 360 behind. I would hate for him to fold pocket 9s or pocket 8s or something like that. That's pretty much drawing dead to 2 outs here. So now, maybe there is a case to just putting in all the money here if he has a 3 or if he has some type of draw like 6-7 or a flush draw. But I figure since he's only got about 360 behind, we can just click this on the flop and then just get the money in on most turns. So I do raise to 160 here, just a small raise. He puts in a quick call. The turn is an ace of spades, and now he donks all in for $200, and you hear me say,
You got me in a quandary now.
This is a horrible card for us. The ace X of diamonds gets there. The hands like pocket 3s or 4-3 or whatever get there on this turn. So we're losing to the straights. We're losing to the ace X of diamonds. I'm not sure when the turn is an ace that he would just come out and donk all in if he had a hand like 6-7 or a hand like queen jack of diamonds. So this to me just feels like we are always beat here. This is just another way they let you off the hook. You know, they check raise their good stuff, but they also just donk their good stuff when they get there. So we are able to get away from this. We fold, and the low jack shows 10-3 of hearts for a turned straight. Next hand, we open the second best hand in poker, pocket aces to $20 in the low jack. Reason I'm opening smaller here is because there are a couple short stacks behind. So small blind and big blind are going to call. We're 3 ways to a flop, which comes jack 7 deuce with a couple of hearts. The blinds check. We go $30 here into 55. Now the small blind folds and the big blind calls. Everything is going great so far. The turn is a 7 pairing the board. At this point, I think the big blind, when he calls last to act closing the action, can have quite a lot of 7x, and if he does have jack x, well, he started this hand relatively short, only about 500 600 effective. So if he does have a jack, he's going to call the small size on the turn, and we'll just be able to get all the money in on the river. It is going to incentivize him to stick around with some of his draws with low equity hands like 8-9 or 10-9 that get a little bit more elastic on these turns when the board pairs. Also his smaller flush draws. When he does have a 7, this is going to incentivize him to fast play right now. So that's what happens. Actually, we go 50 and he check raises to 200. And as you guys know, the last time someone check raised a turn as a bluff, George Washington Carver was president of the United States of America. And the last time this guy check raised a turn as a bluff specifically was, well, never. So we are going to fold and unfortunately just have to lay down the pocket aces here to an extremely tight player. All right, next hand here, the cutoff posts. We look down at 4-3 of diamonds in the hijack here and have picked up that the cutoff isn't really interested in this hand. So we're essentially in the cutoff here. We open to 25. The button calls. We are heads up to a flop, which comes 5-4-3. So we flop bottom 2 pair. Just checking my entire range here, and the button goes really big. He goes $50 here. If I had a set, if I could beat the 2 pair, I would probably just check raise all the time here. Of course, if I had a straight here, I'd be check raising all of the time. So I am just going to call, and the turn, unfortunately, is a 6 of spades. So it brings out a one-liner and a front door flush. So we're going to check, and he just checks it back. River now a 10 of spades, so I am just going to check, and then maybe we can have some devious intentions if he does bet and choose a small sizing here on this river. But he just checks it back. He tables pocket 6s very quickly, so we were ahead on the flop, and he turned the set. And he takes down a relatively small pot for the strength of both of our hands. All right, big pot alert. This one surprised the crap out of me. I was, I'm still not sure what happened to this hand, so let's talk about it. Low jack opens to 20. We look down at pocket Kiglies, automatic 3-bet. We go 70, and the low jack is going to call. So we are on the button in position. Flop comes 9-5-3 with a couple of hearts. Low jack checks quickly, just c-betting my entire range here. I actually decide to size up on this board because I don't necessarily think he's going to have a lot of strong stuff that wants to fast play on this board. I'd size up, I go 70, and now he puts in a check raise to 170. And it's always concerning when a player check raises in a 3-bet pot when you were the pre-flop aggressor and show nothing but strength. It feels like, hey, maybe I have an ace-high flush draw, or more likely, I have a hand like pocket jacks or pocket queens or something like that that just needs protection. And that's the size I always use with a hand like that. So I'm going to call, not expecting him to have a set at a high frequency. Turn is a 5 of clubs, pairing the board. Pretty good for us. And now he goes 250 into 485. Once again, no real reason to be concerned here. I think we have the best hand a lot. Reduces the combos of value that he can have even further here. And to me, this just feels a lot like a hand like pocket jacks, pocket 10s, pocket queens. So we are going to call. Now the river is a 6 of hearts, bringing in the front door flush, and low jack snap checks. At this point, I think we have the best hand 100% of the time with the way this hand is played out. And if he flipped over a hand like pocket queens or pocket jacks, and I was trying to make that hand fold, I think I would have to go really, really big here. Maybe 800, 900 approaching pot, even though the flush gets there. So I think we can still get some chunky value on this river. I decide to go 500 into 985, and he snap calls, and we show our hand, and he shows 7-5 of hearts for turned trips and a rivered flush. So definitely did not see this one coming. Just absolutely got the max here, got us to value on ourselves on the river, so kudos to him. But this is not the way I generally see players play a combo draw here, especially when they get there on the river. Usually they just bet. All right, still reeling from that last one, and we were up a bunch. We were up like 1,100 on the session. Now we're about even, but we've got pocket Kiglies again, so let's try to get it back. EP limps, low jack goes 20, we go 60 in the hijack with the aforementioned Kiglies. The limper folds and the low jack calls, heads up to a flop, which comes 10, 7, 6. Low jack checks, and we go $50 here, and he calls. Turn is now a 9, bringing a one-liner to a straight. When he checks, I elect to check this back. Think we are just losing to a lot of hands now. 2 pair, straights, sets of 9s. And if he does check the river, well, maybe we can go for some thin value then. The river is a king of clubs, actually bringing in backdoor clubs, and the low jack comes out and bets 185. This is a tough spot because, as I've talked about before, my favorite line is the check back turn bluff catch river, but that's usually when they go small, when they go about half pot, 60% pot, right? That's the size they choose when they're bluffing. And so I'm going through my bluff catching checklist. Do we beat value when he chooses this 185 size? I don't think so, especially when there's a one-liner to a straight out there. Backdoor clubs have come in. I don't think he's doing this with a hand we beat like 10-9 or pocket 9s. We've given him a little bit of rope by choosing the small sizing on the flop and checking back the turn. Not really sure what he could be bluffing with, but players do kind of just float the flop way too wide when you choose small sizes. The river size is a little bit concerning, but you know what? We've got top set, so we reluctantly put in the call. And he says, nice call, and tables ace-4 of diamonds. So he just floated the flop with backdoor nothing, and we are good on this river. All right, next hand here, low jack makes it 20. We're on the button with ace jack. We 3-bet it up to $70 hairs. Now the small blind cold calls. When players cold call, it's usually going to be pocket pairs, 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks, queens, maybe some suited Broadway type hands, ace-king off, stuff like that. So already not particularly loving this situation. Low jack folds. We're heads up with the cold caller in the small blind. Flop comes 9-5-3. I'm just going to start off with a small bet here. If he does have hands like ace-king, ace-queen, I think we can obviously get those to fold. So I go $60 and he clicks it to 120. Now, when he chooses this small raise size, this is just always going to be for protection. I think he's just got 10s or jacks here. If I had aces, I am not sure I would click this because I think it would look too strong. Like if we click this to like 250 or 300 or something, I think players may just fold 10s or jacks a high percentage of the time, because what does it look like we have when we 3-bet, c-bet the flop, and then bet 3-bet the flop? Well, it looks like we got aces or kings all the time. I would not 3-bet this flop for value because I think it looks too strong. So therefore, that gives me the idea, maybe as a bluff here, we can click this and get this guy to fold a hand like 10s or jacks. If not now on the flop, at least on the turn, we can like click the flop and then jam the turn. I think we can get this through a lot of the time. So I go 300 here with ace jack, and now, well, it just poops in our face. He goes all in here for about 1.1, 1.2K effective, and obviously we are just done with this. Did not work, so we fold, and he shows pocket queens, pretty much the exact hand we were trying to make fold here. So just can't press the right buttons, or maybe just pressing the right buttons against the wrong players.
Hello.
You smell nice.
You're a serious poker player.
Absolutely.
What do you think the max win rate is at a $5 blind 1,000 cap game?
I would say $100.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make $100 an hour, and I was going to ask you if you think it's possible, but now I don't even have to ask you.
Your max win rate or anyone's max win rate?
Well, first anyone's, and not mine.
I think $100 is maximum.
What about for me?
I think about $100.
Well, you heard it here first from Mr. DGAF. $100. He thinks it's possible.
I think you can do it, yeah.
Okay, have a gentle day.
Thank you. How many hours do you have to do?
300.
Okay. Are people betting against you?
No one would take action.
I will.
It's already over.
Oh, you won.
It's almost over.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mark. But I want you to achieve all your dreams.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, man.
All right, next hand here, double board PLO bomb pot. We've got king, queen, 6-6, and we love to see it because board one comes king, deuce, 3. So we've got top pair. But wait, the second board comes 6-5-5. So we have top full house on the second board. We're in the small blind here, so we're just checking our entire range. Checks the cutoff, who pots it for 150 6-handed. Button calls on us in the small blind. We are going to just pile in as much money as possible. We go 750 here. The hijack calls all in for less, so he calls for 150. The cutoff tanks and eventually folds, and the button folds. So we are just all in for 150 here, I guess. Top board is an 8 of diamonds, bringing in the front door flush on the turn, and bottom board is a 10 of clubs, and the river 4 of diamonds up top, and a king of hearts down below. And now the hijack tables, ace, 10, 9, 7, with the 10, 9, and 7 of diamonds. So he just got it in here with a 10 high flush draw on the top board and a gut shot on the second board on a paired board. And we chop this one up. Double board PLO bomb pots, guys, are good. All right, this is a fun one. We raised to 25 from EP with ace 8 of clubs, the low jack cutoff, and button all call. Flop comes 7-5-3 with a couple of clubs. So we flop the nut flush draw with 3 players in position, just checking my entire range here. We check. Low jack goes 50. Now the cutoff jams all in for 220, and the button folds. And kind of a weird spot for us here because the cutoff is the short stack. So we have the low jack behind us, who initially stabbed at this flop, who we are about 1.3, 1.4K effective with here. It would really suck here to fold out our equity, but But if we just click this or we jam here, well, we allow essentially the low jack to play perfectly. And when he does have a super strong hand, like a set or a straight or something like that, he just gets to put in all the money against us, drawing very thinly. So I think clicking this or raising this from the cutoff jam is bad because it allows the low jack to play perfectly. But I decide by calling here, when we just check on this flop as the pre-flop raiser, and then it goes bet jam in front of us and we call, like we look very, very strong, right? It looks like we have a set, or it looks like we have like a big overpair. So if he just has a hand like pocket nines or something like that here, he may just fold when we cold call. So I don't know, kind of a weird spot, and I couldn't really figure out what to do in game, but I did decide just to cold call the 220 here. And the low jack actually is going to get out of the way. So we are heads up all in with the cutoff. Turn is a 7 of spades, river's a king of spades. So we brick, we table ace high, and the cutoff actually mucks. So we win this with the ace high flush draw, just assuming the cutoff had a straight draw or a smaller flush draw. And the low jack probably did have the best hand here 100% of the time. So get a little bit lucky, and we scoop this one with ace high. All right, next hand here, we've got pocket kigglies again. And so when the hijack opens to 20, we 3-bet to 60 on the button. Hijack calls heads up to a flop, which comes king 9-3 rainbow. So we flop top set on a pretty dry static board here. When he checks, I'm just going to go very, very small. I would hate for a hand like pocket tens or pocket jacks to fold right now. So I go 30 doll hairs and he calls. Turn is now a 4 of spades, complete badoogie. So there's no flush draws out there. Only straight draws possible are hands like 10 jack or queen 10, queen jack. So once again, I'm gonna go very, very small here. And I go 50 into 185, just trying to keep around 9x, pocket tens, etc. And hijack is going to call. Now the river is a 2 of spades, and when we have 2 kings in our hand, maybe there is a case to be made here for just sizing up on the river, you know, targeting a hand like king queen suited or king jack suited if he does have the last combo of king X in his hand. But I decide here that that is rather unlikely, and I think I can get one more street of very small value from a hand like pocket tens or 9x. So I decided to go small here. I think it's close between going very, very small and just sizing up, going like 250 or something, targeting the king X. I go 50, and the hijack begrudgingly puts in a call saying, I know you've got ace king. We show pocket kings, of course, we are good. We win a nice pot, and I think this one's just an example of just because we have the nuts doesn't mean we're allowed to bet huge if it's just very, very unlikely that our opponent has a good hand. All right, next hand here. Not a fan of doing this usually, but we have table changed because everybody at the table had less than $400. Just not going to be a very profitable table to play against. More than that, it's just not fun when everybody has less than 100 big blinds. Like, you are essentially just playing ABC poker, just betting thinly for value. There's no room to really maneuver. There's no room to play creative. It's just not fun poker, not enjoying it. So I did table change to the other table where the table was a little bit deeper. Under the gun straddles to 10. We raise to 40 here in the low jack. And the big blind's going to call heads up to a flop, which comes 7-4-4. So we flop top pair. He checks it over. We go 50 and he snap calls. Turn is now a 10 of spades. Our hand is thin value. So I'm going to check this back. Use this as a bluff catcher on the river. But the river is an 8 of hearts. And when he checks, I do think if he did have a 10 on the river, he would just come out and bet. So now at this point, I think we can get value from hands like 7x, ace 7, which we now beat, 7-6, maybe even hands like pocket 5s and pocket 6s. I think we just have the best hand here all of the time, or at least most of the time. I guess we could lose to like pocket 9s here some of the time, but I think we're ahead of more than the stuff that we lose to. So I go $80. He puts in a call. We show, and we are good. All right, next hand, we have moved to our seat, the Marc Goone special seat. So the straddle is on this table, so much better than the other table. Straddle's on to $10. Low jack goes 40. We're in the hijack. We make it 110 with 10-9 of spades. And now the straddle is going to cold call, and the low jack is in there as well. Flop comes king 10-6 with all clubs. Checks over to us, and multi-way, I am just going to check this back with kind of a showdown value-y hand in a 3-bet pot. Turns a 4 of spades. Checks through again. Now the river is a 6, pairing the board. Under the gun comes out and bets 200, and low jack folds. And I figure at this point we've got a bluff catcher. The size size is a little bit concerning. I feel a lot better about this if he bets, say, 150 or even 175. We've given rope. We 3-bet and then just check back the flop, check back the turn. We do have middle pair. I think he could just have a bunch of Broadway cards here that are just stabbing on the river, figuring he's got no showdown value. And I don't know. Players just come out and stab here sometimes on rivers and just bluff with like pocket sevens or something for no discernible reason. So I reluctantly put in the call, and the under the gun tables Ace-King for top pair. So he gets us, he cold called the Ace-King, checked the turn, and then came out and bet the river.
All right, guys, next day, session wrap up. Played about 10 hours. Lost again, lost about $300 this time. We're in the doldrums. Sometimes it happens in poker, you know. First 100 or so hours ran pretty good. Last 150 or so hours ran pretty bad. So it's just poker, nothing you can do sometimes. Hopefully these last 40, 45 hours or so, we can turn things around and get back on track. You never know, things swing very quickly in the land of poker. So on the way back into Hustler right now, going to play a Sunday session, mix it up a little bit, see how things go. Pray for us, poker gods, please bless us and give us the opportunity to get back on track. See you guys on the other side.
All right, jumping into the second session of the week here at Hustler, gonna have to just splurge and rehire those paid actors because things are not going according to plan. Let's see if we can turn it around. First hand here, we are in the cutoff with ace-8 of diamonds. We raise to 25. Big blind calls, heads up to a flop, 9-8-4. He checks it over, we go half pot, he calls. Turn is a 3 of diamonds. We've got kind of a thin value-y, showdown value-y hand, so we check this back. River is a 6 of hearts. He comes out and bets 55 here into 100. We snap call, and he shows king 10 for king high. We are good, obviously. This line is super profitable. Add it to your game if you have not already. It's one of the most common lines I use in single raise pots, heads up in position. Next hand, the low jack limps and the cutoff over limps. We make it 40 on the button with ace queen, and both of the limpers call. Flop comes jack, jack, 10, and when both players check it over to us, well, there are 2 diamonds out there. We have the ace of diamonds in our hand. We've also got a gutter to the Broadway straight. So if I was out of position, would not be betting this. If it was 4 or 5 ways, would not be betting this. But 3 ways against 2 limpers, think we can take a stab here and possibly continue betting on turns if conditions are favorable. So we go 45. Both players actually call here. So we are going to shut this down unless we bink, and the turn is a, nope, just kidding. That wouldn't happen to us. The turn is a 3 of hearts. So it checks over to us and we check it back. River's now a 3, double pairing the board. When the low jack checks, the cutoff comes out and bets 120. Think the cutoff would almost always raise on the flop if he had a hand like Jack X after the low jack called next to act. So this is never a jack. Also, a jack would just bet bigger. What is he betting for this size on the river? I'm not sure. They come out and bet thinly with a 10. So this to me feels like 3x of diamonds or nothing. And the low jack has pretty much announced that he's done with this. So we flick in the call. The cutoff says we are good. So against recreational players, I just show. I don't try to embarrass them or make them show their combo. You're not getting some type of valuable information by seeing what forsaken combo the recreational player has decided to bluff with. So we just table, we are good, and we rake in a nice little pot. Next hand, PLO double board bum pot. We've got king, jack, 10-7 with a couple of diamonds. Flop 1 comes king 5-5. Board deuce comes ace 9-8. And so we have top pair on the top board, and we have a wrap with the jack 10-7 on the second board. So we're in the big blind, second to act, just checking range here. We check. EP goes 200, and the cutoff jams all in for 190. I think especially when this player, who is, let's be generous and say he's just on the tighter side, pots it from early position into this many players, well, we just don't have any fold equity here. Whatever hand he has, he's not folding, right? He probably just has trips with an ace kicker, or maybe even a full house on the other board, or he's just got a set on the board where we have a wrap. So I think we got a little bit too much equity to fold right now, so we're gonna put in the call. Now the turn is an 8 of spades up top and a 6 of clubs down below, so we make the nuts on the second board, and we check it over, and EP pots it. We just jam for the remaining $35 $8 or whatever. And now the EP player obviously calls it off. Queen of spades up top, 4 of diamonds down below, and the EP player shows 10, 8, 7, 5. So we are actually going to get quartered here because he has a full house with 8-5 on the top board, and he also has 10-7 on the bottom board with us. So just pretty unfortunate luck here, running into a hand that's playing both boards. I think maybe 80-90% of the time in this situation, we are just running into a hand that has like a set on the bottom board, which we scoop, or a hand that is just trips up top where we are going to chop. So unfortunate, but we get quartered. Next hand, we go 25 from under the gun with king 7 of spades. Only the big blind calls, heads up to a flop, which comes ace, jack, deuce with a couple of spades. And when he checks it over on these ace high boards, this is the one situation where I am not c-betting my entire range in single raise pots heads up in position. I'm just choosing a big bet or check strategy. And with a hand that is drawing to the nuts here, this is going to be part of my big bet. So I go 60 here, an overbet on the flop, and the big blind is going to call. Turn is now in offsuit 4, just a blank, and when he checks it over, I am going to overbet once again on the turn, just applying max pressure to his ace X holdings. I go 200 and he puts in the call. Now the plan here is to overbet jam on most rivers, but the river is a deuce pairing the board, and I have found that when the board pairs, players just get way more sticky with top pair. So I'm actually just going to check this back because of the board pairing. The big blind shows king 10. So I actually called the flop overbet and the turn overbet with just a gut shot, and the dealer now starts pushing the pot to the big blind. This is how you know things aren't going your way, guys. We chop the pot, and the dealer just immediately just pushes the pot to the big blind. I'm like, hey guys, wait a second. This is a chop, and the big blind gives me half of the pot back. Next hand here, double board PLO bomb pot. We've got 6-6, 3 deuce with a couple of hearts. Top board comes queen, queen 6, so we flop bottom full house. Second board ace 10, 7, so we flop a 3 high flush draw. And from the small blind, first to act, we're just checking. It checks around. A deuce up top, so a pretty clean card for us, and an 8 of diamonds down below. We are going to check again and see what happens. Maybe just coming out and betting here is viable, trying to get multiple calls where we've got the top board most likely, and then we can get several players who are playing the bottom board to call, and then we can just kind of chop up their money on the top board. But I'm going to check here because I think our hand is pretty vulnerable on the top board where we have bottom full house, and I would like to kind of apply max fold equity. So I think those are the two strategies here, just trying to get multiple players to call or just trying to apply max fold equity. So we check, under the gun goes 200, low jack calls, hijack calls, and we are going to jam here. We just put in all the money. Now the under the gun player is going to call for approximately 340 total, so he doesn't have much more, and the hijack calls for 360. We are 3 ways all in, and it is an 8 of spades up top and a jack of spades down below, and the hijack shows ace, queen, 10, 9, and the under the gun player shows ace, jack, 7, 4. He had 2 pair on the bottom board. We are going to chop this one up with the hijack, who rivers a straight on the bottom board. And look at this, our hearts were actually live. So we could have scooped this one. We could have scooped this one, but we'll take it. We will chop this one up. We will chop up the under the gun player's money with the hijack. All right, another really clear example of how to just let you off the hook always. We open to 25 from under the gun with ace-king. EP calls, small blind calls, big blind calls. Flop comes ace, queen, 5. When the small blind and big blind check, we've only got 1 player in position to us, a couple players out of position. So here I'm just going to be betting myself when I do have strong hands, not expecting this flop to get stabbed at a high frequency, particularly when the board is dry and static. So I just go 50 here, and now the EP player next to act is going to raise to 150. Small blind folds and big blind folds. This is just a really easy fold. This board is massively under bluffed. He raised next to act. There's no flush draws. There's no straight draws. Like, what is he bluffing with here on this board? They just always put us on ace-king when we see bet multi-way on this board. So this is just value all the time. I'm just expecting to see pocket 5s or ace-queen all the time. So I fold, pretty easy fold here, and he is kind enough to show ace queen. All right, next hand here, under the gun limps. Hijack makes it 30, and the cutoff and button both call. We're in the big blind with queen 6 of diamonds. Yes, this is speculative, but I do not think this under the gun player has the old limp raise in him. So I'm just gonna call here with a suited queen. Under the gun calls as well, and the flop comes queen 5-3 with a couple of clubs. Checks over to the hijack, the pre-flop raiser, who goes 1/3 pot. He goes 45 here. Cutoff and button fold. We have a pretty easy call. Under the gun gets out of the way as well. Heads up to a turn, which is a 7 of hearts. We check, and now he goes just over half pot again. He goes 135, and there is a front door flush draw, a back door flush draw, some straight draws out there, and you know, we've got top pair and a gutter to go along with it, so we're gonna put in the call as well, see what happens on the river. River is a 6 of hearts, so the backdoor flush draw comes in and makes a one-liner to a straight, and most importantly, we make 2 pair. At this point, I do think if this player has a hand like queen jack or queen 10, those hands are just going to be checking back if we check to him. So when players will not value bet thinly, and they are probably just massively under bluffing. Why do we think this player's under bluffing? When someone c-bets the flop 5 ways, they're probably not messing around. If players will not value bet thinly and will not bluff at an appropriate frequency, that's when we want to consider leading with some of our value hands on the river. So that's what I'm going to do here. I donk for $400, and now I start talking.
This is a very difficult spot.
So I can't go all in now, I guess, right?
That would be something. Tell me what you have and I'll tell you what to do.
I have a pair.
A pair? That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, if I were you, you can't call me with a pair.
Okay, I don't have a pair.
I don't have a straight. You don't like folding, do you?
The problem is I really just have a pair.
I'm gonna shut my mouth.
Thank you.
I think if he had chosen a larger size on the flop or a larger size on the turn, this donk size is really good to target like ace queen, pocket kings, whatever. But when he chooses this size on the flop and turn, I think we need to target a little bit of a weaker range. Maybe 300 here is the size. Either way, unfortunately for us, he's going to tank forever. Finally, he's going to fold. And I think just going just slightly smaller on this river gets the call from the pocket jacks or pocket 10s or whatever he did have here. All right, next hand here. Hijack goes 25. We make it 100 with pocket kigglies once again in small blind, getting pocket kigglies quite a few times in these last couple sessions. Hijack calls heads up to a flop, which comes 7-4 deuce. Just checking my entire range here to a recreational player. We check. Hijack goes 100, and now it is time to check raise. I would like to play a 2-street game here. If he has a hand like pocket 10s or pocket jacks or something like that, don't think he's ever folding. We've seen, right? I tried to bluff the guy off pocket queens in a 3-bet pot earlier on like an 8-high board or a 7-high board like this, and he didn't fold. So don't think this guy is folding if he has one of those hands ever. So I check raise to 450, and now he jams for 1,080, surprisingly. And you hear me say here,
All right, I'm not nit rolling you, but I'm seriously considering laying down a very big hand.
You know, we saw earlier the guy just check raise, bet, 4-bet jam the flop or whatever with pocket queens on an 8-high or 9-high board or whatever. But this to me feels a little bit different. The reason why it feels different is because this guy is in position. A lot of times when players are out of position, if they're not going to fold an overpair like jacks or queens or 10s or something like that on this board, sometimes they just put the money in because they're like, well, I'm not folding no matter what. Like it's fear of a bad decision. They don't want to have to face a tough decision on the turn. So they just end all of the decision making right now and put the money in. But when they're in position, I find this happens less and less. Obviously, it's never a bluff, and I'm just not sure he does this at a high enough frequency with hands like 10s, jacks, queens. This to me feels like a set or pocket aces most of the time. So that's why I'm considering folding here. However, you know, could it be queens or jacks some of the time? Maybe. I'm not really sure. I feel bad about it. My gut here is to fold. You hear me talking about I might fold here. But it's only about 600 more. We don't have to be right all that often. So I begrudgingly put in the call, and he flips over 4 deuce of hearts. So he flops 2 pair. Turn is a deuce, and we are drawing to a king. River, unfortunately, a 5 of hearts, and that is probably going to be enough poker for us here today.
Next day, wrapped up the last session. Do we think I won?
No,
Do I ever win?
never.
Did I lose?
Did you lose?
Yes.
We're poor.
We are. Adam will put the results over there. That's right. Adam puts the results there now, but Marco's still around. Don't worry. Marco chopped this up. Adam did the results. That's more interesting than what happened last session. Thank you guys. See you soon.